Welcome to Live Town Hall. My name is Michael A. Charbon, and I'll be your host for the next hour. Live Town Hall is an interactive and live show. We encourage you to participate. It is your questions and your participation that makes this show interesting. You can reach us at facebooklive.com/live town hall. Now, as live television would have it, and obviously since we've publicized it, we're going to go up at 7 o'clock. You got to go up at 7 o'clock, hence live television, as they say. Well, we're still waiting for our two guests to arrive. Traffic is always interesting in the summertime, and it is one of those days. Our studios are located in downtown Brampton, and as you would know, traffic traveling north, everybody coming home, always is an interesting trip. Again, we encourage you to participate. Live Town Hall is an interactive show where your questions are taken and your comments as well, and we interact with our guests. Pose your questions and let them have their chance at answering what you, the watching and listening audience, is interested in. So let's, first of all, today is an interesting show because we're talking about politics. As you know, Andrew Scheer was elected the federal Conservative leader just lately. And we've also had former Prime Minister Stephen Harper a long time ago who decided that he was going to run in politics. And some would say because of that, that's why we lost the election. But unfortunately, the scenario is that as we move forward, votes are hard to come by, and here we are in Ontario wondering what we're going to do next. My guests have arrived. Hello, gentlemen. Welcome. We're going to put some microphones on you. Live Town Hall is an interactive show. You can get a hold of us at facebooklive.com/live town hall. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do my introduction. So my first guest is a Carleton, Mississippi MPP. He was born in Canada. He went to Queen's University. He was a farmer and a civil engineer. His family has lived in the area where he is born in since 1826. So there's a lot of heritage there. His first foray in politics in 2011. He ran against an incumbent who had had the seat for almost 34 years. So the gentleman came in and 50% of the vote, of the gross vote, as one would say, in the constituency was won by him. He ran again in 2014 and was also elected. He was a progressive conservative critic for the Senate and Democratic Reform since 2013. He was a critic for natural resources and forestry. He was a chairman of the PC's Blue Ribbon panel on property rights. Then on May 28th, MacLaren, his name is Mr. Jack MacLaren, was expelled from the PC caucus by Patrick Brown. Patrick Brown stated that Jack MacLaren has been caught making comments that are unacceptable. I have expelled Jack MacLaren from the PC caucus, and that expulsion is indefinite. He will not be a progressive conservative candidate in the new provincial election. Well, Mr. MacLaren retorts back with saying, I resigned from the Progressive Conservative Party last week, but I did join the Trillium Party. So I'm now a member of the Trillium Party of Ontario, and I'll be continuing to sit as an MPP in Queen's Park for the next year. And the Trillium Party, he goes on to say, will give me the opportunity to speak freely of my constituents' behalf, to vote freely on their behalf, and to have an input into all policy making on their behalf. Welcome, my guest, Mr. Jack MacLaren, Carleton, Mississippi, MPP. Welcome.
Thank you, Michael.
My next guest is Mr. Bob. I'm sorry I didn't have time to speak to you, but how do you pronounce your last name?
Yaciuk.
Yaciuk. Mr. Bob Yaciuk. Mr. Yaciuk is the leader of the Trillium Party of Ontario. It was formed in 2014. They're described as a right-of-centre party in the province of Ontario. They ran in both the 2014 and 2016 election and fielded numerous candidates. Unfortunately, none were able to reach the Ontario legislature. Their platform, and one would say most Ontarios suffer from anger at best and indifference at worst. Both of these sentiments are founded in three things, as the Trillium Party states. One, the distrust of current political parties, say whatever you have to do to win, and poll-driven policy statements. The second pillar, one would say, is absence of common sense and goals that complete lack of understanding of the needs of the regular folks. And finally, apparent disdain for the everyday people of Ontario. And the Trillium Party responds to all of those with the answer that they say, we as Ontarians deserve better. Bob Yaciuk, the leader of the Trillium Party of Ontario.
Thank you for having us, Michael.
Gentlemen, thank you so much for coming. A lot of stuff. I've listened to some of the interviews on CRA in Ottawa. I've read a lot of things. I'm not here to re-solicit what happened. There were some comments that were made. There were some things that were done. You've apologized. You've went for a sensitivity training. What does come to the attention is the reason you believe that Patrick Brown said that you were no longer part of his caucus. You were jettisoned from the caucus. You say that you left the caucus because you wanted to join the Trillium Party. Can you clarify that for the folks at home for us?
I did decide to leave the PC party before the day that Patrick sent out a note publicly to me to expel me from the party. Mm-hmm. He did do that last Sunday. Mm-hmm. But last week, on Friday, the 26th of May, I believe it was, yes. Bob Yaciuk and I had, after many meetings and many very thorough discussions, and with me talking to many people in my riding, my constituency, my board of directors in the Riding Association, and considerable thought and consideration, made the decision to join the Trillium Party.
What's been the reaction of your constituents?
Very positive. My board of directors was completely on board, completely. I'm getting all kinds of extremely positive calls now that it's gone public.
Right.
I should back up, Michael, and just explain that was a week ago. Last Friday, we made the decision to join the Trillium Party and Bob to accept me as a member. Sunday, the PC party made the announcement that they wanted to expel me from the party.
You talked to the Toronto Star ahead of time. There was an article that was written that already stated that you were going to go to the Trillium Party in advance of what was said from the Progressive Conservatives.
In fact, the sequence went a bit like this. We made the decision last week to leave the party. Mm-hmm. Bob and I had decided that on Tuesday of this week, yesterday, mm-hmm. we would make an announcement from the media studio at Queen's Park that I was joining the Trillium Party, right. and we would be stepping down as a member of the PC party. Before we could make that announcement, I guess the PCs must have figured out what we were going to do.
Well, it's kind of the got quit, if that's what it sounds like, right?
Well, they wanted to make their announcement first. So, at any rate.
Mixed emotions for you, positive emotions, because now the Trillium Party, you're still an independent because you were elected as a Progressive Conservative, so you're sitting as an independent, but you align yourself with the values and espouse the party line of the Trillium Party. So
I would argue that. No, I'm a member of the Trillium Party. Absolutely.
Well, you weren't elected as a member of the Trillium Party. You were elected as a Progressive Conservative, and as a result, now you sit as an independent. Bob, again, my question to you, is it mixed emotions? One, it's not the kind of way that you would have wanted to see someone come to your party. But secondly, now at least you have someone sitting in the legislature that could speak to some of the things that the Trillium Party, their message that they want to get across.
Well, I'll challenge you on that statement, Michael, but it's not really mixed emotions at all. How can I be anything but thrilled that we have a sitting member in Parliament? I mean, Jack coming over, that's a good thing no matter how you slice it. Jack is like the only person in the former Progressive Conservative Party that's still holding true to the values that he was elected on. In fact, he's the only guy, if you look at our platform on our website, you're going to see that most of the things that Jack and the PCs campaigned on, Jack's holding true to.
Yeah, we talk about carbon tax, we talk sex ed. We're gonna step onto each one of those little things. What I want to do is I want to encourage the folks at home to participate with us. This is Live Town Hall. You can reach us at facebooklive.com/Live Town Hall, and we'll take your questions and pose them as they come. Let's see if we just have a couple here first. Felix says, "Hello, Mr. MacLaren. Thanks for taking a stand against Patrick Brown. We need more leaders and courage like you. Which of your other caucus colleagues might follow?" Interesting.
An interesting question indeed, Felix. I don't know that. I have not asked any of my colleagues if they would like to follow me and join the Trillium Party. It was my decision and my decision alone as far as discussing with other PC caucus members. I know that there is great frustration within the PC caucus by some other PC members in being forced to vote, as the party says, whipped votes, which really means we're not allowed as individual members to vote often as we would like.
So that's an interesting aspect of the Trillium Party. The only time that there is a vote that everyone has to come together on is on a budgetary situation. In general,
Two times.
Okay, sorry.
Non-confidence vote, of course.
Okay.
And would I ever love to be in the position of being able to do that? Yes. That means we have at least 50% of the House. But non-confidence and budget. And those are the only two times, because the purpose of having a person elected is to represent his constituents. When you can't do that, well, hey, one way to save a lot of money, I think, would be just to get rid of all the MPPs and have the leader of the party handle their votes. Well, that's shouldn't happen. That's just...
And Michael, if I could just, or Felix, if I could jump in there, I said, even though I've only been a sitting member of the Parliament as an MPP for the Trillium Party for 3 days now, I've already voted 7 times, and 2 times yesterday I voted no against 2 government bills that I objected to, and I was the only vote in the legislature against those bills. The other parties were whipped to vote the way the party told them. And I would have been whipped to do that too if I had stayed. So I've already
been whipped. That's interesting. Not physically, but voting wise.
So I've exercised my Trillium. I've exercised my Trillium freedom already.
I still find it odd for you to say that you are a sitting member of the Trillium Party. You were elected by... The elephant in the room is that you were elected as a progressive conservative. One would say that the Trillium Party is an offshoot. Is that fair to say? Bob, that is an offshoot of conservatism? You're right of center in conservatism.
Well, I don't know where you get that information from, because something that I do know, Michael...
It's all over.
Well, all over doesn't make it so. That just means
Hence
probably
why I'm asking
a Wikipedia line.
Okay. A Wikipedia line.
Oh, yeah. Hey, my sister called up, Bob, you're in Wikipedia. I thought, wow,
We're
this
all
is a
in
good
Wikipedia
day.
for one.
My point is this.
Yes.
The Trillium Party for 2 years has been professing to be a common sense alternative. I don't think that 99% of the people know what a left-wing policy is or what a right-wing policy is. But when you sit at a kitchen table, everybody definitely knows what a common sense policy is. Everybody knows that you should get rewarded for effort. Everybody knows that there's those that need to be helped. But as soon as you categorize it as a conservative or a liberal or a socialist, it's like a label that doesn't want to be, that you have to deal with. We don't want that. We like to think of ourselves as a common sense alternative. People want to keep pushing us as a right-wing party, but you know what we are? We're people that want to simply do what's good for the people of Ontario. We had Patrick Brown stand up in AGM, and he said, I support the carbon tax. Because Patrick Brown likes to categorize himself as a right-wing person, does that mean that supporting a carbon tax is a right-wing policy? I don't think so.
Okay, you have many interesting points. Unfortunately, the reality is you don't have a seat, a legitimate seat. I'm not saying that you're not legitimate. You haven't had a seat that was voted specifically as a result of being a member of the Trillium Party. It is through Mr. MacLaren's movement to an independent that he now espouses to your party line. So I just want to take a couple of more questions here. Again, Facebook Live is all about you, your interaction, your questions with us. You can reach us at facebooklive.com/live town hall. My name is Michael Charbon, and we'll be here for an hour talking to these two gentlemen. So Corey says the start of this party appears most similar to the Wild Rose Party of Alberta. Interesting question. Formed. It spends several years in obscurity, then gains a sitting MPP after sitting members leave an already existing Conservative Party that many had felt moved too far left. The Wild Rose quickly became a serious power in Alberta. Do Jack and Bob intend to do the same with the Trillium Party?
I would say there are great similarities in the respect that the only reason the Trillium Party exists, Bob founded it, and why I'm attracted to it, is because there's huge frustration, not just in the legislature among MPPs with existing parties who have lost touch with grassroots people, but with grassroots people who know that. And they're not happy with the choices that are there with the existing parties that are sitting there, the 3 main parties. So they're looking for a change, they're looking for an alternative because of dissatisfaction with parties that aren't listening to grassroots people. That is the foundation of democracy. Take, for example, Michael, right now, the nomination meetings are going on across Ontario with the PC party and to a lesser degree with the Liberals. And the amount of interference and meddling, picking of favorites, pushing aside people they don't like, even some pretty serious allegations of corruption in Ottawa West Nepean, OPP charges against the Liberals.
Well, there was one in particular where, and I'm just looking for my reference, because in my research, there was a problem where you were saying that the PCs were not going to acknowledge your nomination again, because what you're alleging is that they were afraid that you were going to get nominated, and they were interested in putting forth a Marielle Fullerton, a doctor who has been touted as being the next health minister. Now, that's quite big allegations, but now that you're not part of that PC drive, they've started the nominations, right?
Yeah, yes. But I mean, I did campaign towards a nomination meeting that we thought would happen someday for the last year.
Right.
I was successful in selling 1,000 memberships by knocking on doors with a whole lot of volunteers for a lot of days. Pure hard work, Michael. And we got 1,000 memberships, which is huge, and would have been a number, I'm confident, to win that nomination race. But we decided, and in talking with Bob, what would we get if I won the nomination? What would we have? I'd be a member of a party where I was uncomfortable, where I was dissatisfied, where I felt democracy was being ignored, grassroots people are being ignored, and my voice was stifled. So we made the change.
I have to address the elephant in the room. Some would say the biggest problem is you can't wash away some of the things that happened in the past. How do you, I mean, in any future election that you run in, there's always going to be, I mean, we joked about Wikipedia. We talk about everything that is in existence. There was radio interviews, there's little snippets, there's comments of this. There's been apologies, there has been consideration of emotions, etc. How do you move forward from that? How do you say to a potential voter that, I mean, Bill Clinton did it. Many people have done it. I made a mistake. I don't mean that to be joking. I mean, seriously, though, politicians have been able to overcome mistakes. We all make mistakes. But in politics, it's a little bit of a dirty business at times. So in the terms of your next electoral race, what are you going to say to that opponent, that young opponent, you know, the 26-year-old lawyer who wants to be the first person to run in his family, and he's going to attack you with some of this stuff? What do you say to that person? Because that is a problem that one has to deal with.
If I could address that, Michael.
Sure. And I'm not trying to be mean here. As I said, it's the elephant in the room.
It has to be addressed. Let's look at it here.
Okay.
We've turned into a society, a political organization, or a culture that apology seems to be the first thing that gets it's like a get out of jail free card. Kathleen Wynne apologized to the people for the gas plant fiasco. It was 1.6, 2.1. Our rounding errors don't know whether it's 1.2 or $2 billion waste of money. And she gets up there and she says, "I'm sorry about that." And everybody accepts it. And then she moves forward. What I think this is all about is Jack was able to vote against 2 bills today. For the first time, he was able to vote what his constituents want, because that's his job. His constituents voted for Jack, and Jack is now able to stand up proudly and say, "I'm against this," or "I'm for that."
So what do you say to that politician that dredges up all the business? Is it that it is a form of we've changed, or I've changed, I'm moving forward, I have more clarity now? I'm 66 years old, 65 years old. Am I joking?
Oh,
in that zone? You look very good, though.
Michael, I'm in my prime.
You're in your prime. I mean, 66 is a new 45, right?
There we
go.
But
I mean, how do you, I mean, it's the elephant in the room. It's not as if it's not going to be asked, right?
Well, it seems to be a bigger elephant for some people than it is for me. I've been in politics now for 6 years, and before that I was basically building to politics for 20 years. I've done a lot of community work. I'm very confident about who I am. I'm very confident about my abilities. I'm very confident about the relationship I have with the grassroots people in my riding, and I would say even across Ontario. And I know that I have strong support in my riding. Mm-hmm. I've sold memberships over the past year, right, in spite of a few bumps in the road in the past. Those problems. People look to me and say, "You made a little mistake."
Have you learned something from all this?
I've learned that I need to stick to what I'm good at, which is talking to people.
Stick to your knitting, as they say.
Stick to my knitting. Yes, you're right, Michael.
So one more question on that. It was interesting that it was pegged on you a 2012 comment that was the impetus that supposedly was the last straw that broke the camel's back. That's interesting, considering that 2012 was a heck of a long time ago, that would come back to roost you. Well, what's your comment on that?
Well, my comment that I've been making over the last few days, many, many times, is that it was 5 years ago. It was not an issue 5 years ago. The PC Party leader's office at the time knew about this little video that was put up by a friend of mine at a meeting that I did attend, and asked, well, could that be taken down, because we're just not sure that's quite appropriate. That was taken down. Not one person complained then, not one media outlet complained. It was a non-event then, it's a non-event now. Why they seem to think after 5 years this non-problem is now a problem.
Okay.
I say that's insignificant.
Sounds like a tool that might have been used for another purpose.
Possibly. Well, Patrick Brown is not here to defend himself, so one can't, how should one say?
What we do know is this, Michael, is on a Sunday morning at 8:10, when it's been a long time since I've seen a public official be waking up that early to do a release on anything. All of a sudden, this archived video comes out of nowhere that's 5 years old. I mean, even it was grainy, for Pete's sake.
Well, they would, you know, and again, I want to kind of leave that now. I think we've killed that cat.
Fair
but
enough.
as one would say, what lives in the virtual world lives forever. So I hope. And this is what my hope is that our folks at home who are watching Live Town Hall, that this will live as well and give you an opportunity to represent who you are, where you've been, and for you, Bob, to be able to tell people what your party is, because you haven't been given that opportunity because you haven't had a seat, so no one's known about you. You still, in literal senses, don't have a seat, but now you have someone who's at least speaking what your party wants to achieve and voting his conscience, right?
The Trillium Party has a voice. And
has a voice. Okay, let's get to some questions here, because I want to deal with the people who are participating. And again, I thank you very much. FacebookLive.com/Live Town Hall. We're here with Bob Yaciuk, who is the leader of the Trillium Party, Mr. Jack MacLaren, who was an MPP for Carleton, Mississippi Mills. Okay, Shiv says, Mr. MacLaren, Patrick Brown used to oppose gay marriage and abortion, and now he won't let his MPPs vote their conscience or speak their opinions on these issues. Does he have a hidden agenda?
I guess my answer to that is Patrick is making decisions on what he has to say to win votes and potentially win the next election. He seems to have lost sight on the values that I believe grassroots people want to see in a politician, which would be the reason they would want to vote for them, that they're voting for the values the man stands for, not just winning votes and winning seats.
I do have to say, in Patrick's defense, I've had the pleasure and opportunity to interview Mr. Brown twice. We've done a live town hall. He definitely has a challenge, and being a leader is always a challenge. I don't know if it's fair to say he's lost his value system. There may be a different code of that, but he's not here to defend himself. So I want to be able to just put that out there, because there are folks that would say, we need to have Patrick Brown there because in the event that we go to election and Kathleen Wynne is still heading the Liberals, we need someone like that. So there are many people out there who may agree with many of the things that your party, the Trillium Party, and what you espouse, but the numbers are, we have 107 seats, that's it.
Well, what I would say, it's not just the PC Party. The Liberals are the same. They very much look at polls and try to determine what do people want to hear, as opposed to come forth with the values that will help build better communities, stronger families, and a better country.
Rosalind says, hi, Jack. When did the consultation happen about switching parties? And who other than your riding associates encouraged you? How many times did you consult?
I've been unhappy with the way things have been going on in the PC Party for several years. The whip votes, the manipulated nomination meetings, policy being made at the top, very little grassroots input. And things have just gradually over time accumulated, and this was kind of one of the last straws that broke the camel's back, so to speak. So we have, over a period of time, been dissatisfied, we meaning me and the people I represent, my riding association, The Ontario Landowners Association is a huge support group for me, of which I'm very proud. I'm the past president of that organization. And people in my community, I talk to many trusted peoples, and not just in my riding. I've been blessed by meeting good people all over Ontario. And we have strong support. So this wasn't just my decision to join the Trillium Party. It was done after much extensive consultation with Bob and other Trillium people and the people that support me. So we've taken our time, made a decision, and it's the right one. And I'll tell you, Michael, since I made that decision, I feel very happy and I sleep better.
You're watching Live Town Hall. My name is Michael A. Charbon. You're having the opportunity here to participate. You can get to us at facebooklive.com/live town hall. I'm with Bob Yaciuk, the leader of the Trillium Party, and Jack MacLaren, representative MPP for Carleton, Mississippi Mills. Let's go to Robert's question. Mr. Yaciuk, what is the current state of your party? How many members are there, and how much money have you raised?
Well, we have well over 1,000 members, and that was before Jack crossed the floor. And I can only tell you this, in the last 2 days, I got the update today, and we've had 7,000 people that have come to our website, and almost all of those people went to the policy page, and I don't know how many of those people signed up as members, but all I heard from the people that are working with us is, holy smokes, this is great. So somewhere well over 1,000 members. Money in the bank? We have very little money in the bank, but we have a lot of character, and we have a lot of good ideas, and we're getting that message out loud and clear. So we're not measuring the Trillium Party about the amount of money in the bank, but we are measuring it by the ideas that we're able to put it forward.
If I could interject, Michael, and make a comment on money in the bank. So I'd like to invite you and all the people of this community to a fundraiser for the Trillium Party of Ontario. At my farm, we're going to have a barn dance with a country and western band and a barbecue. It would be great to see you there.
Hope you have roasted corn. That's the only way you can do it.
Okay.
So Jackson writes, I read that Patrick Brown said he spoke to you, but you said you haven't spoken to him in a year. I don't know who to believe this is. Your mom or the dead fight?
Well, conversations between Patrick and I were few and far between. The message I got Sunday morning at 10 after 8 that Bob talks about was an email from his chief of staff. That is the kind of communication I had with Patrick.
James says, since you mentioned policy, what's Brown actually saying about it to the caucus? Is he taking input? I heard there's going to be a convention where people get to vote, so that sounds like a good thing, doesn't it?
Well, I don't know. I'm not part of caucus anymore, Michael, so I don't know. I know before, caucus was very controlled, very big on whipped votes. We were told what to do, and increasingly more and more votes were getting whipped, which was absolutely unnecessary, I thought. The policy meeting coming up in November for the PC party was, we all thought that was a welcome thing. I was chair of the Blue Ribbon Panel on Private Property Rights. Patrick appointed me to that. I was very excited about that because I believe property rights are important to all Canadians and all Ontarians. And we did a lot of work putting together a committee with 9 people, traveling around having about 15 town hall meetings across Ontario, whether it's Southwest, Northern Ontario, Sudbury, Toronto. And we got a lot of great input, wrote up a great report, and submitted this to the Policy Advisory Committee, and we're looking forward to taking that to this policy meeting in Toronto. And then we were told, instead of our committee being able to present it and speak to it, the PAC would make a decision on what would be presented at the policy meeting in November. So it's, again, managed data, managed input, and people between the grassroots people in the party, which is too bad.
I read a private member's bill that you introduced with regards to being able to quote on government contracts. This was with regards to Quebec and Ontario, where the right... has anything been done about that? And just explain to the folks at home a little more about what went on, because that was very interesting.
Well, I live in Ottawa. My riding is along the Ottawa River. Of course, Quebec's across the river. The bill was called Fairness is a Two-Way Street.
Right.
And it addressed labor mobility between the two provinces.
Right, for Quebec unions to bid on Ontario contracts and Ontario on Quebec contracts.
Or the ability of workers to travel from Quebec into Ontario and work on Canadian or Ontario construction jobs. And we would hope it would happen the other way, but it doesn't happen the other way. Quebec, the unions are very powerful. They don't allow Ontario workers to go into Quebec, so it's not a two-way street.
And what's happened with that?
The bill was defeated, unfortunately, and nothing has happened. It's too bad. It's a problem that needs to be fixed, and it was a good idea.
One of the elements that I looked up, and I'll address this to you, Bob. The Trillium Party states that they're a voice of constituents that should be heard in Parliament and representation. You represent democracy, family values. You're interested in free votes. You want to review the sex education bill. No carbon tax, reduction of hydro bills. You're a party of values, true family values. When you say family values, can you explain that? I would say every party is interested in true family values.
You would think so. When I define family values, I look at the family unit as the thing that everything grows from the family. You look after your family. You give them security. You have a job that you go to. You know that your children have good schools to go to and that they are going to be more successful than you. That's the goal of every parent. And then after you get your family feeling secure, you look after your neighbors. Then your neighbors look after their neighbors. Pretty soon your village looks after the town, and eventually the province grows stronger. When I grew up, I remember everybody hating Ontario. I remember everybody from Newfoundland thought Ontario was the worst place in the world. They hated everybody here. BC hated us all. And you know why they hated us? Because we had the best schools, we had the best roads, we had the best jobs, we had the best houses, we had the best hospitals. I mean, those are good reasons to be disliked. So
but family values
come down to looking after your family. You were going to raise your, I think you may be getting to the idea of reviewing the sex ed curriculum, good or bad.
That's my next question. But
Fair
when
enough.
you say family values, sometimes people would
It's about
take
security,
that
Michael.
would take that as code words.
It's not.
So we embrace the gay, transsexual, and transgendered lifestyle because that has been put into our laws. Is that also part of?
That's the law.
Right.
No one's going to argue with the law. Right. If somebody wants to do their thing, do their thing. Somebody doesn't want to do their thing, they don't have to do their thing. Neither one should be having to force to look after, praise, worship, or endure the other person's
loving
thing.
people together raising a child. I mean,
Do what you want to do.
So the reason I wanted to say that is because sometimes people take that as code words. Family values. What do you mean family?
Oh, there's too many code words. Say what you mean what you say. It's pretty simple.
So let's go to the sex education.
Sure.
That was, and I will tell you, I've done several programs here, particularly in the Peel region. We have multi-religious groups who look at some of the things that have been discussed in the new sex ed, and it has upset them because there are certain things within that, some would say norms and values of current day, which is not consistent with some of their religious beliefs and what they believe should be taught at school. How do you take a position on that from the Trillium Party's?
Position's simple.
Okay.
It's not about what's so much about what's in the sex ed curriculum. It's about the way it come about. Parents were not consulted, despite what they say. The parents were not consulted. Right now, the education system is acting like co-parents to our children. You know, Rogers, I believe it was Rogers that was taken to task because they put out, well, if you don't like our cable package, just send us, we're going to be billing you for the cable package, but if you don't like it, send us a note that says we don't want it. They were taken to task, and that was wrong. Parents got up, everybody got up, saying that's wrong. But now, the education system is saying, this is our package, we're giving it to you, send us a letter if you don't want your child to participate in it. The parents decide the moral compass of their children.
I will say that, again, I had the opportunity to sit down with Kathleen Wynne, our Premier, for an hour, and it was one of the topics we talked about. And as I said, I've done several programs on it and seen both sides of it. The problem that is purported is that they're saying that there are some families that don't address sex education whatsoever, and that there has to be a norm. And they have said, I'm not supporting it or denying, I'm just trying to give some value of another perspective. They're saying that it needs to be taught and there needs to be those lessons. And they said that they hired qualified people that consulted with them to get to that place where they are right now.
And I think one of them's in jail right now, Michael.
And what would you... What would you do differently, and what would you do if you were given the opportunity?
If I was a king for a day,
yes,
I'd first of all, this would be the premise. The school is there to teach, basically the 3 R's, but also as far as sex education is concerned, I grew up we had sex education. We knew that if you did this without protection, could be dangerous to your health. Fair enough. And then we had our parents, or probably the kids next to us, or I think in my day, anyway, we sorted it all out. And the thing was...
What is it the problem? Is it the age you're having, or is it the content?
I don't have a problem with, the content, or I don't have a problem with it at all. I have that problem with the idea that, well, you said it yourself. Kathleen Wynne said parents are not picking up the banner and looking after...
Because it's happening way earlier.
That's the problem. Okay. So address the problem, but don't decide to be the parents to the children. That's all I'm saying. One of the greatest privileges I think any family could have, any parent should have, is the ability to raise their children with their own values. I don't know if you have children, Michael, or not.
Two that I know of.
Oh, two that you know. But I can guarantee...
That was a joke. I do have 2 kids, sorry.
That he knows of. But what I can say, Michael, is I can almost guarantee that if I meet your children in a room, I'm going to be able to pick out your kids, and I'm going to be able to shake their hand the same as I shake your hand, and I'm going to recognize your value sets in those children. And that's the gift and the pleasure that you should be able to give to your children.
I agree with you, but and I don't want to make a big point of this. There are just some people who don't take that leap to be able to educate their kids. And what the government feels it is our responsibility to increase the maturity level and understand that the age at which children engage in sex, talk about sex, the availability on the internet, that there should be some bar established. I think that's...
Well, I will suggest to you
So you want to review the bar.
Review the bar.
Okay.
The guy that was director of it is in jail on sex crimes against children, for Pete's sake. That should have every parent going, okay, wait a minute, slow down the bus a little tiny bit, and let's at least review what's going on. That's the only common sense approach to it. I'm not for or against it, the stuff that's in it. What I'm against is that the parents aren't allowed to direct the moral compass of the children.
I appreciate you engaging in this because, and I'll let you come in a second, because there are people out there who don't know what your party represents. And it is, in many instances, people are saying, oh, they're a little bit right of center of conservatives. I mean, that's...
Nobody knows what that means.
Well, I'm just saying, I mean, you're not liberal, you're not left-wing, you're not communist. You would say you're in the
communist. We're not fascist. So where does that put us?
You're in the conservative envelope, let us say.
And what does that mean?
Well, the conservative, you're fiscally responsible.
Would a liberal say they're not fiscally responsible?
Well, I mean, I have some stats here, which is pretty shocking when you're playing 90 billion. I mean,
I'm not saying they are.
I'm not going to start talking
about
it. The unfortunate reality is, and one can make an opinion on society, that we live in a society that lives beyond its means. And we're attuned or accustomed to a lifestyle.
Right.
Sorry, this is not about me, this is about you guys, and it's about you guys at home. And we want you to interact. It's Facebook live / town hall. My name is Michael Charbon. We're joined by Bob Yaciuk, who is the leader of the Trillium Party of Ontario, and Jack MacLaren, who is the MPP for Carleton, Mississippi Mills. Okay, so Michael, take some questions. That's what I'm going to do. Manpreet says, Mr. MacLaren, you supported Patrick Brown for leader in 2015. Actually, you're the second person when he was going for his leadership. You were at his side and supported him, right?
Yes.
He seems to have changed on every policy position, like abortion. What do you think makes him change? He does not seem to stand for anything. And that's Manpreet.
Those are pretty strong comments. I understand why Manpreet would say that. Why Patrick has changed, I can't explain other than to say he must feel it's the best way to get votes and win seats and win the election, which is a compromise of values, and which is one of the reasons why, again, I've come to the Trillium Party for this thing called values, which is the essence of our society. We talk about family values, are the big ones. Why do we work? Why do we play? Why do we do the work we do, Bob and I, trying to make better government? Which is out of respecting families in Ontario to have the right to do certain things like raise their children they want. Michael, I'd like to tell you about a bill that I'm going to vote on tomorrow. Bill 89, which is an amendment to the Children's Aid Society Act. And there's a lot of people very upset about this because this tramples again on family values or the right of parents to choose how to parent their children. So in this bill, one of the inferences or problems identified is that if a child decides they have gender identification problems, like little Johnny thinks, I'm a girl, or that little Susie thinks I'm a boy.
Yeah, no, we understand what that means. Yeah.
So this bill would say that potentially if a parent would want to say to that child, to offer guidance and direction, to say, well, Johnny, you really are a boy, so we just need to, you need to realize that you physically are a boy, and we need to talk about that and make sure that if you're confused or mixed up, we're going to give you some guidance to try to go down what we feel as your parents is the right path. If this amendment to the Children's Aid Society says that if a parent could be charged with interfering with the right of the child to choose their own identity, gender identity, and that could be viewed as abuse. The minister has said that abuse is abuse is abuse, and if a parent is interfering with the child's right to choose who he thinks he is, that could be potentially abuse. The legislation doesn't quite say that, but the minister did. A lot of people are very upset about that. I'm going to vote against this bill tomorrow because it interferes in the ability of the parent to do the job of parenting their children, offering that guidance.
I have a question for you. What about the parent who does not want to acknowledge the choice that their child makes because they're embarrassed, they don't appreciate, they don't acknowledge it, and the child is having emotional problems? I mean, the amount of suicides and drug abuse that takes place in young people, there are those exceptions to the rule where that child has made a decision that he or she. Do you not think that you're empowering the child and that in certain circumstances that legislation would have to be invoked?
I would say to you, Michael, the parent is the expert on what's best for their children, not government.
Well, some would say that the child is better the expert to determine what he or she gender they identify.
A child can recognize that if a parent can recognize that if a child truly does believe they're of the opposite sex, that decision should be accommodated or recognized.
Michael,
okay.
What kind of parent wouldn't want the best for the child? So you're going to find parents, there are parents that seem to neglect that thing. But the problem is that the parent is a bad parent. Maybe that's where the addressing should be done. Maybe that there should be, the government should possibly trying to get the parent more involved in the child's life. Next thing we're going to put it to the food breakfast program and then a lunch program. And did you know that the children aren't getting full dinners when they go home at night? So maybe they should eat dinner here. And you know what? Some of them don't get enough sleep. So maybe they should just stay at the school all night. And I'm being facetious a little bit. But where does it stop? When does the parent quit being the parent? The problem is that the government's trying to step in for the parent, and it's like cradle to grave, and now they're just saying, hey, I want to be the parent of your children. Hey, they'll either always vote Liberal, they'll always vote PC. Jack, I ask you, and this bill that's coming up, how do you think that it's going to be, how do you think the vote's going to go?
Well, it's a Liberal majority government, it's a Liberal bill, it will pass. However, I still think those of us who have a problem with or object to this bill should voice our objections to it. And to the credit of the PC party, I've heard they will be voting against it, and certainly I will.
Okay, Felix says, Mr. MacLaren, are there any good PC MPPs left who you would still endorse? Party animosity aside, like Mr. Brown has lost our vote, but should we give up on guys like Hillier and McNaughton too?
There's lots of good people in the PC party. I would say more of the problem, certainly for me, was the top-down management and the control, the whipping of votes, the management of nomination meetings, and all that interference and management that took away our freedom. And I would say our right as individual MPPs to represent the people who elect us, speak for them, vote for them, and help make policy on their behalf. That's grassroots policy.
So we've gone 45 minutes in live town hall. My name is Michael A. Charbon, joined by Mr. Jack MacLaren, who is the MPP for Carleton, Mississippi Mills. Mississippi, it always seems, I'm always thinking I'm going to...
Just think...
I'm eating crayfish.
Just think of
Carleton's... wait a second, it's going to be... Is it not the... Is your writing not going to be changed for the next election?
It will be... It'll be called Canada Carleton.
Canada Carleton, okay. You've been the MPP there since 2011, and Mr. Bob Yaciuk, who is the leader of the Trillium Party of Ontario. You are watching Live Town Hall. My name is Michael A. Charbon. You can get in touch with us with facebooklive.com facebook.com/live town hall. We've done 45 minutes. My producer, Paul Vicente, tells me we can go a little bit over as we're getting many more questions. I encourage you to participate. This is a live show. It is interactive, and it is your questions that make this show work. And I must say, when you're talking to a new party and to someone who has crossed the floor, there's always interest, and there's always, how should one say, there's a little turmoil. You've been accused of being upset, ruckus. I mean, I've heard several interviews where you were put on the spot and you were accused of certain things, and we've talked of many of the same things, and you haven't gotten upset. I would say we've had a good dialogue.
Civil.
I would say so, yes.
Civil. All right, so let's talk to Felix. Felix says, Mr. MacLaren, we already did that, I'm sorry. James says, should we still vote for some PC MPPs because they'll all override Brown once he's in power? Which ones? Trillium can't form the government, realistically. Maybe you could form the balance of power in a minority swing if things go with the PCs should not. On which PC should we still support?
Well, I would say the Trillium Party is going to offer fresh new choices to the people of Ontario. Mm-hmm. I'm going to be campaigning as hard as I can in my riding to win the next election in a year's time. And Bob and I are going to be traveling the province of Ontario over the next 12 months, talking about what we stand for, the values we stand for, which includes family values. You won't hear us talking about right-wing, left-wing, conservative, liberal. We're talking about the values that are Canadian values, I would say Ontario values, and family values, Michael. That's what concerns people, because at the end of the day, everybody goes home to their family, to their home, where their wives, their children, their mothers and fathers are. That's why we work. That's why we need a better life, is to maintain the freedom we have to parent our children, to work where we want, to live and love our families, and to have a healthy community that we can all enjoy with our neighbors. Mm-hmm. That's what the Trillium Party of Ontario is going to be offering the people of Ontario.
Scotty offers a comment. Scotty says that Patrick Brown is basically a liberal. He supported all of Wynn's liberal policies. I will not support Patrick Brown. So, any idea how many candidates you're going to field in the next election?
Well, I'd like to say we're going to have an entire field. That might be a bit optimistic. We're going to field as many as we can. Right now we have over 30 candidates ready to go in all different phases of paperwork and commitments. But, to address the Patrick Brown and Kathleen Wynne policies being no different from one or the other, I've been in politics a long, long time. Over 30 years I've been in politics. And one of the rules is the Progressive Conservatives have lost the last couple of elections. In fact, you could almost say that either one of the leaders went to Florida for the election, they would probably have won. It's as soon as they start saying the wrong thing, they screw up. On any strategy, in any strategy game, if you are this far ahead in the polls, a legitimate, what seems like a reasonable strategy would be to do identical to what the person behind you is in the polls, because then you'll cross the gate, then you won't screw up. Unfortunately, for what I think is going to happen in the Progressive Conservative caucus, that's going to fail, because sooner or later you have to differentiate yourself. You can't out-liberal the Liberals. The Liberals can't out-PC the PCs.
So the Liberals are at about 12% right now, as far as popularity is concerned. They're talking about raising the minimum wage. Some would say that's a carrot in advance of the election.
Might get another 8 points.
One would also say that the only real opposition to a Liberal government in Ontario is the Progressive Conservatives. Realistically, one could say, and you've been running since 2014. You haven't been able to field a seat as of yet, so it would be highly unlikely, not impossible, because Donald Trump.
You're not insulting me. It's okay.
No, I'm not. No, but I mean, realistically, sure. Right? The deal is, it would be very difficult and highly unlikely for the Trillium Party to form a majority government. So, if one would look at the Trillium Party as being a participator in the change of a Liberal-dominated Ontario, I have to say I've had the opportunity to interview Andrea Horwath many times. She's got something going there. She is making a difference, and she is going to challenge what the Progressive Conservatives are presenting. who would you, as a party, from a policy standpoint, I mean, we see what's going on in British Columbia. That's very interesting. Liberal minority government, and now you've got the Greens.
That's the only way you can describe it.
But no, I mean, it's very interesting. So, I mean, politics is very fluid. My question is to you, in the next election, who would you side with to be able to change the Liberal government, if that's what you want to do?
Well, clearly there's only one answer that I'm going to give, and that's going to be the Trillium Party of Ontario.
No, but again,
I know you want to say
no,
realistically
with all due
after
respect,
that, don't you?
I understand. Believe me, I understand you've got to represent your party, and I get that. But realistically, come on, the three of us, we're talking straight. We're talking about family values and talking straight. You're not going to make a minority, and you're not going to be a majority. Who would you be in support with? I mean, you got it. That's a legit question.
We're serious about what we're doing. The Trillium Party is well established, has great policy ideas, which I agree with. I've been around for a while, so I have great communications with my grassroots people. And with people across Ontario, I'm getting phone calls, not just from my riding, but from people, different groups of people in Toronto, right across the province, saying, good for you, Jack, glad you did it, it was time to make a change. What we're going to be doing is traveling the roads of Ontario, talking to anybody that would like to listen to us about the values that we have to offer, which we think are good Ontario values that will appeal to families. Like with us voting against this bill tomorrow. And the two that I voted against yesterday, where I was the only one that voted against them, because I have the freedom to vote the way I want.
But a person in Ontario that wants to have their voice and an ability to make change are going to look, there may be many aspects of your party that they would agree with, but there's not enough volume to float the boat.
We won't be the government, for sure.
My question is, who would you have to, do you not believe there's someone you have to align with to a certain extent?
No, not align with, Michael. I know what you're getting at, but we would view it a little different. We will have values that we're committed to that are the values of the people of Ontario because we are in touch with grassroots people. We will support good ideas from whatever party comes up with a good idea.
Would you say you're a little more progressive conservative? I'm trying to massage this so nicely. Would you not?
Oh, well, you think we haven't noticed that you're trying to...
No, I'm just trying to get it from you because in the next question...
Me to say we're going to endorse somebody.
No, I'm not saying endorse. I get you've got to support your party. I get that.
Yeah.
But realistically, you are more akin to a conservative perspective than you would be a liberal perspective. Is that fair?
You could say so, but I would say...
So, I mean, if we talk about fiscal responsibility...
I still want to say common sense.
So let's talk about fiscal responsibility. Let's talk about where our debt is. We have the largest sovereign debt of any non-nation in the world. One person would say that liberals are spend, and conservatives are cut. I mean, if you want to look at the spectrum of where that is, where does the Trillium Party fit in that perspective?
If I may say... I think
you don't have to ask. Just jump in. We're all friends here.
I believe, and what I say often when I'm given the podium, is what is the job of government, which I think is what we're trying to get at here, and then who's going to do it? That's the next question. The job of government is to help people, Michael. But for those of us that have our health and our wealth, we can pretty much get along on our own so long as we don't get taxed to death. But there are many in our society who need help, who cannot help themselves. It is our job to look after those people. As a caring society, we have a moral obligation to help those that can't help themselves. That is the job of government, regardless of party. Any government that spends wrongfully or wastefully or frivolously or neglects that idea that our job is to help those who can't help themselves is doing a bad job. So we will be preaching that message to anybody and everybody for the next year, and we will get as many people elected for the Trillium Party as we can. And if that's 2 or 4 or 8, whatever number it might be, it won't be a majority, it won't even be the opposition probably, but it'll be a significant voice. And we're going to say, we'll vote with you on those issues, but you'll need to amend it to help people.
Michael, if I could add one more thing, if you don't mind. Okay, what's going to happen is we're going to get a good percentage of votes. Jack is going to be standing up in the House there, happier than ever that he can vote for what he wants. There's going to be a lot of swing ridings, and we're going to be affecting votes in a lot of swing ridings. Some
would say that you're going to marginalize some of the conservative votes.
We're going to marginalize some of the liberals
that are needed to compete against the liberals.
Compete? What? The thing is, people
I
hear what you're saying. We haven't heard that we're going to split the vote.
I'm no savant.
Well, fair enough. But that's the assumption that we're going to be just stealing from the Conservative vote. Look at every election I've ever operated in, every campaign that I've ever run in. There's this many Conservative pre-C votes, there's this many Liberal votes, and there's this many, and then the vast majority are undecided. If we can influence that vast majority, that's when we're going to make a difference in provincial parliament, because all of a sudden these other guys, all the people are sitting in there now, oh my gosh, that guy's actually speaking for his community. The Trillium Party got over 4% of the vote, and that's why we lost 7 ridings, 15 ridings, 25 ridings. Oh my gosh, we're going to have to start letting our members speak more. We're going to have to start listening to the grassroots. That's the goal, and that's how it starts. Every new party starts off with, first of all, they marginalize you and they ridicule and they laugh at you. Mm-hmm. And then they start calling you racist, bigot, or something along that lines, and that you're all...
And they dredge it all up and start again.
And then they get angry at you, and then they're afraid of you, and then we win. Well, we're moving along with the help of some of the PC tack dogs that are coming at us.
3 out of 5 so far.
We're already past that door.
I want to get a couple of questions in before we end here. Guy says, Jack and Bob, I live in Ottawa, West Nepean. I'm disgusted with the outright fraud of those very same people who speak at the top of the back room swamp. I have ripped up my PC card and am looking at a new party. I can't support a leader who steals democracy to get his friends stuffed in Ottawa, West Nepean. Will you not allow the totally open nominations? Jackson also says, since you brought up minimum wage, what did Patrick Brown and his staff actually say about minimum wage away from the cameras? He's being evasive now.
To Guy, I would say
I knew you were going to come back to that.
Well, Ottawa West Nepean is my neighboring riding,
yep.
and there was blatant corruption there. You know, they actually had more ballots in the box than there was voters. So you might say there was some cheating going on there.
Oh, well.
And but they picked a winner anyway. So it's, I guess
like policy is developed that way, isn't it, Jack?
That's a new form of freedom, Bob.
So what about the minimum wage?
Well, I mean, I'm not in caucus anymore, Michael, so I wasn't in caucus this week. I don't know what they talked about minimum wage. Everybody wants workers to get as much money as they can so they can live the best way they can. We all want that.
So Johan wants to know, when you spoke up in caucus against some of the things that Patrick Brown was putting forth, what was the response to your objections?
Actually, that was never talked about when I was in caucus. I wasn't in caucus this week because I'm not part of caucus anymore.
But let's talk when you were in caucus, when you brought up objections. When there was objections to policy, Johan asked, when MPP speak against policies and bills in caucus meetings to Patrick Brown, what was his reaction to your objections?
Well, in caucus, generally, the decision is, it's almost always a whip vote. So that's the stifling of democracy right there. So if you come up and say, well, with an opinion that I really can't vote with the party on this because that goes against the way I feel and the way my constituents want me to vote, for whatever the issue might be. That's not accepted well. And people, so it becomes very, very difficult to speak out. It's discouraged, you're frowned upon, treated badly. They're tense. Yeah, you handed it like a magician.
So you guys didn't notice that, right? I had to bring this in. This is the $200,000 duck. This is the largest yellow duck that's ever been on this desk. Oh. So I got to ask you. I mean, go ahead, it's yours. We got under 2 minutes, but I'm just asking. Like, where do we go from there?
You know what? I look at it like this. It's a little bit of a magician's trick. Hey, look at this duck while we do all this.
No, that's $200,000
That's
duck.
a $1.6 billion energy plant that was never built. Billion. 1. You know what?
So what do you say about this? What do you say about this?
Well, we talked earlier about the job.
You had no idea I was going to bring this up.
No, we did. The $1.2 billion plant in Oakville, the two of them.
Yeah.
What that means is, you know, we talked earlier a few minutes ago about the job of government is to help those who can't help themselves. Yes. When we spend $1 billion on a duct like the gas plant, so we can win seats.
No, I'm talking about they spent $200,000 in bringing the world's largest yellow duck for the Celebration 150. They were given a budget, and the provincial Liberals spent $200,000.
Again. They hold the duck up here and they do this over here. And you know what? This show is actually consuming time on the stupid duck. And the front page of the Toronto Sun is what the duck. And meanwhile,
so what would you do if you were the government and someone came up with a $200,000 duck to celebrate?
My personal feeling is that a bureaucrat come up with this somewhere and thought, hey, this looks kind of cool. My kids
Tourist
like
thing.
that.
It's the largest duck in the world.
And then now, once it happened, and they're all employed by the government, they say, well, we have to back it up, and we're going to put a spin to make it red and white at least. That's
so what I want to do is we're just about out of time, but I want to give you each an opportunity, and I'm going to hope you're going to stick to about a minute and a half because I don't want to take too much more of our folks' time at home. Thank you very much for all your questions. We encourage you to continue posting because there will be people from the Trillium Party who will be able to review these. And we hope that you'll share this video because I hope it was as informative for you as it was for me. So, Bob, I'm going to give you just a moment to talk directly to the folks, about $1.50 if you'd be so kind, and tell them where they can get in touch with you and where they can learn more about the Trillium Party.
Well, a good way to get in touch with us and find out what our policies are and what our values are is go to www.trilliumpartyontario.ca. That's a good starting point. We obviously have the Facebook and we have the Twitter as well. The Trillium Party started out, basically I've been a long-term political activist, organizer with the federal conservatives, with the progressive conservatives, and I couldn't take any more of that. And as soon as I started being disgruntled and talking about it, all of a sudden I was surrounded by a whole bunch of people. And they all said, we should form our own party. And I said, well, okay, let's put one foot in front of the other and do it. And we got all kinds of support. Let me tell you, as soon as you do it, they go, holy smokes, that guy did it. And then they say, okay, they back off. Next thing you know, that it'll never go anywhere. We have a sitting member of provincial parliament. That's pretty cool right now. We have a voice in parliament. Now, the other thing is, what are we going to have before we go into the next election?
How do they get in touch with you, and where can they read? Where can they read and learn more about your party?
Go to the website. That's the starting point.
Trillium Party.
TrilliumPartyOntario.ca. And I think you're going to be you're going to be impressed with the platform planks that we have. We want accountability, of course, but the cool part about us is that we can say and do what we feel. And we want to kickstart, want to reboot this whole scenario. So come look at us. You'll find a little bit about my bio. You'll talk about Jack, but more importantly, you can get involved. I'm asking you straight up. Support the Trillium Party of Ontario. Let them know that you've had enough, you're mad as hell and you've had enough, and that you're going to be looking for another alternative.
Bob Yaciuk, the leader of the Trillium Party of Ontario. They've been formed since 2014. And of course, you can read all about them on the web and go to their website. Final voice to you, Jack. You've been an MPP since 2011, Carleton, Mississippi Mills. You've been elected twice. You first ran with a 50% margin of win, if one would say. You won over an incumbent who had occupied the seat for 34 years. You've had to cross the floor, as one would say, either by force or by your own avails.
By choice.
Your choice, as you presented, and now you've aligned yourself as an independent with the Trillium Party of Ontario. I just want to give you a couple of minutes to sum up to the folks. You can talk to your folks in Ottawa because they do have the net as well. But I think the larger that wasn't meant as a.
They have sidewalks and electricity too.
Hey, no, I'm just. My point was we're not restricted by cable. Everybody has the net.
Well, I'd like to say to the people in my riding, and I would say across Ontario, because I really my plan is to not only campaign in my riding for the election next year, but to travel around as much as I possibly can to people anywhere in the province of Ontario who would like to have me come and talk to them about what the Trillium Party stands for, what our values are, and what we have to offer, which we think is the opportunity for true democracy, recognition of the values that keeps our society going and healthy, values that are family values that we're all looking for. You will find that Bob and I stand for democracy. There will be open nomination meetings with the Trillium Party. There will be no interference, no management. We encourage people to choose the person they want to represent them as elected politician. Elected members like myself will be given the freedom to vote as I see fit. And of course, as a politician, if he's doing his job right, will vote as the people, as his constituents want. And certainly that's what I am doing now. That's what I've always done. I vote for the people that elected me. I speak for the people that elected me. And we're going to create policy as we are told and advised by the people in my riding. You can reach me at the Trillium website, of course. My cell phone number I'm going to give you because for me that's the best way to reach me, 613-250-0000. 0706, and I look forward to meeting people over the next year across Ontario. Anybody can call me. I'd be happy to come and talk to you.
Well, there you have it. Thank you very much, Jack. Appreciate both of you coming in. I know you've been under a little duress, and there's lots of people that are chasing you, and we very much appreciate you coming to Live Town Hall to spend this hour with us. Thank you at home so much for interacting with us and posting your questions. Also, I'd like to thank the folks at Brampton Focus, Mr. Paul Vicente, Mr. Fazil Khan, and Mr. Casson Joseph, who are the three gentlemen who are here today to make this broadcast possible. My name is Michael A. Charbon. I thank you so much for tuning in. We look forward to connecting with you again on Live Town Hall. Thank you for watching.